And now, aviation weather around Alaska. Hello there, I'm National Weather Service meteorologist Peter Chan with your Alaska aviation weather outlook. Now we start with Sunday, but to set things up on this Saturday, we have a powerful low pressure system crossing up through the central Aleutians on up, then eventually into the central Bering Sea. By Sunday afternoon, we expect the low center to be just east of St. Matthew. On this Saturday, we have high wind warnings for areas of the eastern Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula, blizzard warnings along portions of the Kuskokwim on up through the lower Yukon Delta. Also blizzard warnings along the south side of the Seward Peninsula and St. Lawrence Island, including the Nome area for Sunday into early Monday. Interior-wise, we have some winter weather advisories and winter storm warnings. The bulk of that will be coming down with the exception of the areas along the southern Seward Peninsula and St. Lawrence Island by the time we get into Sunday, later morning, afternoon. Secondary development will occur along this front that's arcing ahead of the low by Sunday. And as a result, we'll see winter weather advisories along the eastern Kenai areas around Prince William Sound. And eventually some of this moisture is going to try to spread up into the interior, especially north of the Alaska Range. So we expect conditions to deteriorate across these areas by the time we get into Sunday afternoon and especially Sunday night. But start out Sunday morning, IFR conditions along that frontal boundary with a secondary low trying to take shape. We have widespread IFR conditions along the areas of the southwest coast, lower Yukon, Kuskokwim deltas, westward into the Bering Sea. Sunday afternoon, you can see that front along and ahead of areas of IFR anticipated. And as I said, winter weather advisories in effect for around Prince William Sound, eastern Kenai. We still have IFR conditions here expected along portions of the southwest coast, Kuskokwim, lower Yukon Delta, all the way back up through St. Lawrence Island. Another thing I should point out, too, is we still have very strong winds along the Arctic coast between Utqiagvik and Kaktovik. Some of the strongest winds will be between Deadhorse and Kaktovik, so there will be considerable blowing snow, drifting snow, more of a ground blizzard conditions as a result of these strong winds that will prevail into early next week. So touch and go, very dicey conditions for aviation and ground travel along areas of the Arctic coast. That'll be ongoing with the other things happening here through the Gulf and back through the west side of the state. By Monday morning, IFR conditions spread up in through the Panhandle, northeastern Gulf, Yakutat because of that front. It's precipitation and breezy conditions, and then an IFR extends back out on the south side of the Alaska Range, Talkeetna Mountains, the Matsu Valley, Anchorage Bowl, westward along the southwest coast, and then hooking back up through the lower Yukon Delta, south side of the Seward Peninsula, Nome, and on over towards St. Lawrence Island. Monday afternoon, we should see the area of precipitation and cloud cover. Things begin to lift a little, break up a bit, lingering MVFR with pockets of IFR in the northern half of the Panhandle, pockets of IFR extending up into the central eastern interior by Monday afternoon, then lingering across areas of the west, as well as along the Alaska Range, especially from around Rainy Pass southwestward past Lake Iliamna to just inland there of Bristol Bay. So pass conditions, Anaktuvik Pass and Adigan Pass there up in the east central Brooks Range should generally hold on to VFR conditions, but by Sunday night become at least MVFR. Lake Clark and Merrill down there in the southwest arm of the Alaska Range, IFR conditions prevailing throughout Sunday. Same thing for Rainy Pass. As we go up toward Windy Pass, we expect MVFR conditions become IFR during the day on Sunday. Further east, Isabel Pass, generally MVFR conditions are expected there. And then further east on the Alaska Range, Mentasta Pass should generally see VFR conditions, though moisture creeping upward from the south will likely cause MVFR conditions there once you pop out of the south entrance. And then further south, as that moisture and precipitation begins to spread further inland, Tanita Pass, MVFR becoming IFR on Sunday afternoon and certainly by Sunday evening at dark. And Portage Pass, generally expect IFR conditions there throughout the day on Sunday, especially the eastern half of the pass on out into Prince William Sound, where there is a winter weather advisory for snow and blowing snow. Chilkoot and White will see VFR conditions early Sunday, give way to MVFR conditions then. And looking at the freezing levels at the surface freezing line does pull upward to north of St. Matthew to almost St. Lawrence Island because of that low center that's going to be lifting up. There's already been a transport of milder air along the southwest coast, Bristol Bay, Kuskokwim Bay. And then ahead of that frontal system, notice the freezing levels aloft bump up notably as you go southeastward across the North Pacific south of the Gulf. We expect 2, 4, even 8,000 foot freezing levels aloft there in the North Pacific south of the Gulf. So the greatest threat for icing as we go through Sunday later morning and afternoon, things are going to be spreading northeastward with that frontal boundary. So we expect icing out over the northern Gulf, especially around above 6,000 feet, spreading into the Panhandle. And also, eventually, as this moisture creeps northeastward, we expect potential for some moderate icing above 2,000 feet, spreading into the central and southeast interior, and then a broad area of moderate icing out over the Bering and along the southwest coast, including St. Paul on up through St. Matthew and the St. Lawrence Island above 4,000 feet. Upper level jet stream winds, we have the main jet streams just south of the Gulf, 125 knots southwesterly jet max, and then one behind me dipping northwestward jet, 140 knots there south of the central Aleutians. As we take a look at 700 millibars, a well-defined circulation by Sunday afternoon here near St. Matthew. And so ahead of that, we have a belt of winds North Pacific, south of the Gulf, but there is a southeast southerly flow of stronger winds coming into south central around Prince William Sound. Also, this is again at 700 millibars, 9,000 feet, a broad area of 40 to 55 knot winds along the west coast up through the Bering Strait. And then at 3,000 feet, more telling, we do have those stronger winds, 45 to 60 knots coming right into their Hinchinbrook entrance. So there will be severe turbulence potential in this region along this frontal boundary, along with some low-level wind shear. At 3,000 feet around the low circulation, some of the strongest winds from just off the lower Yukon Delta to just north of St. Lawrence Island, upwards of 65 knots from the southeast. We also have strong winds here, southwest side of the Brooks Range out of Kotzebue Sound, and then along the Arctic coast, winds at 3,000 feet, east-southeast, 45 to as high as 60 knots just to the north offshore there of Utqiagvik. And bringing it down then to the surface and there upwards. Along the Arctic coast, surface 3,000 feet, at the very least some moderate turbulence, even areas of isolated severe turbulence from Utqiagvik eastward to Kaktovik. And then a broad area of moderate to severe turbulence covers the western and especially southwest portion of the state. All the areas, say, south side of St. Lawrence Island, St. Matthew, St. Paul, the lower Yukon, Kuskokwim, Bristol Bay areas, any of these capes, Etolan Strait, likelihood for severe turbulence and low-level wind shear as this front arcs through the region. In the wake of the front, isolated severe turbulence possible along much of the Alaska Peninsula and through the eastern half of the Aleutians, surface to 4,000 feet. And then that area into the northwest, north-central Gulf off of Hinchinbrook entrance with that strong southeast flow and that front arcing and pushing northeastward. We would expect potential for isolated severe turbulence, surface to 6,000 feet, along with low-level wind shear.